Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God, help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God, help us.
Gravitas tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America?
This is what separates us from others who claim to be telling you global stories that matter. In the last 3 days, WION has been traveling across Syria. You are in Latakia city right now. Tell us, what is the situation on ground? At Gravitas, we don't just tell you stories from selected countries from around the world.
2 years since the Myanmar military coup, the people of Myanmar continue to live in a nightmare.
Because it does not suit their propaganda, or because they are too scared to speak truth to power.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Welcome to WION Live Broadcast with me, Susan Tehrani. First, let's take a look at this hour's headlines from New York. President Joe Biden agrees to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later this year in the United States amid months of tension. The offer comes on the eve of a White House visit by Israeli President Isaac Herzog. The Russian military says it has advanced on a limited section of the front in Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region near the city of Kupiansk after successful offensive operations. At least 8 people were injured in a suspected suicide blast near security forces vehicles in Peshawar's Hyderabad area. The world should get ready to face increasingly intense heat waves, says the United Nations, as countries across the northern hemisphere reel from soaring temperatures. A first edition 2007 Apple iPhone sells for over $190,000 at an auction, far exceeding the estimate, dubbed the, quote, Holy Grail by auctioneers. The 4GB model was expected to fetch $50,000 to $100,000. Cristiano Ronaldo takes a shot at Lionel Messi's new home, the MLS side Inter Miami. The Portugal captain says the Saudi Pro League is much better than the MLS, and he says the Israeli President Isaac Herzog is visiting the United States. His upcoming meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden at the White House is second under 10 months and is more than ceremonial this time. It comes against the backdrop of growing U.S. criticism of the Israeli government for initiating a controversial legislation meant to limit the power of the Supreme Court. The ongoing construction in the occupied West Bank during his visit, Israeli President Herzog will also meet Vice President Kamala Harris and congressional leaders. On Wednesday, he will become the second Israeli president after his father to address the U.S. Congress. His speech will mark Israel's celebration of its 75th years of independence. According to White House officials, the meeting between the two leaders is seen as an opportunity to strengthen an already ironclad relationship, further adding that the leaders will discuss how to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. But the declaration of mutual respect has masked strains between the two countries. The Biden administration is frustrated with Netanyahu's position on Israeli settlements and efforts to overhaul the judicial system. Despite this, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been impatiently waiting for his turn to meet President Biden for the first time in Washington since he returned to office in December. Netanyahu's invite came just hours before Herzog's flight, when President Biden phoned Prime Minister Netanyahu, though it's not clear that a White House sit-down is on the table. Interestingly, the invitation to Prime Minister Netanyahu comes after New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman warned in the column that the Biden administration is reassessing its ties with the Netanyahu government. Friedman wrote that Biden believes Prime Minister Netanyahu's government is using its judicial overhaul push as a smokescreen to engage in unprecedented radical behavior. He says that this is undermining the shared interests with Israel. Okay, for more on this, we are being joined by Dr. Alon Bernstein from Tel Aviv. Dr. Bernstein is a visiting assistant professor and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine. Welcome to WION, and good to talk to you. I had to double check to see if the Biden administration is really hypocritically criticizing another government for trying to overhaul its judicial system and Supreme Court. It sounds uncannily similar to what the left here in the United States wants to do to our Supreme Court. So I want to get your opinion about the Biden administration's stance and how justified is it for it to be concerned about what Netanyahu is doing in Israel?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a great question, albeit a very complex one. Israel and the United States have, for many, many years, what we call special relationship. Israel considers the United States its strongest ally. The United States gives billions upon billions of dollars to Israel in military aid and protects Israel and international bodies. So there really is this sort of dynamic where, on the one hand, the two countries are independent, and in Israel there's a lot of voices that are saying the United States should not criticize Israel for internal matters. On the other hand, what the Netanyahu government is trying to do is push forth legislation that is going to severely curtail the Supreme Court's ability to restrain the government at all. It's a very different system than the United States, and the government will really be able to enact legislation or carry out operations, military operations, either in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip, without any restraint from the Supreme Court, something that should legitimately bother the United States if they are protecting Israel in international bodies, if they're giving Israel a lot of financial aid. So while there is this pushback from Israel also saying, don't criticize us, it's an internal matter, the United States does have good legitimate reasons to be concerned in light of their special relationship.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. Dr. Bernstein, can you talk about your views on the future of U.S.-Israeli relations? It seems like Prime Minister Netanyahu is not going anywhere anytime soon.
It certainly does not seem like Netanyahu is going anywhere anytime soon, although his coalition right now, as President Biden pointed out, is considered one of the most radical or extreme coalitions that have been in Israel's history. So it's unclear how long this coalition specifically will last. I think a lot depends on the 2024 elections. Netanyahu, since the Obama administration, has sort of driven Israel and the Israeli alliance more and more towards the Republican Party. And we saw between Netanyahu and Trump this sort of very loving relationship that an Israeli leader and a U.S. leader had not had for a long time. But this also caused alienation within the Democratic Party. Now, President Biden came in, and he has a long history of being a staunch supporter of Israel, and he had full intentions to bring back the support, the United States support for Israel as a bipartisan idea. But a lot depends on what happens in the next election. Right now, Israel, between Netanyahu and Biden, is some of the worst relations that an Israeli prime minister has ever had with a U.S. president. Netanyahu has broken the record negatively of a prime minister not being invited to the United States, an Israeli prime minister not being invited. And really, President Herzog's invitation, and in Israel, the president, unlike in the United States, is just a ceremonial role. He's not the head of the executive. And the president being invited is really almost an additional slap in the face to Netanyahu. It's coming and saying, we still support Israel in the United States. We still love Israel. We don't like you. We don't want you to come, whereas we're going to invite other leaders that actually are not leading the country, but they're ceremonial. We're going to invite them and give them respect. So right now, the relationship is really at an all-time low. It will likely change as the legislation either in Israel either moves forward and the judicial overhaul continues or is halted. That'll have a big influence. But a lot's really going to depend on the elections in 2024. And if we see a return of the Republicans to the White House, everything's likely to change. If we see the Democrats continuing to control the White House, chances are, depending on what happens in Israel, the relationship will continue to deteriorate, as Thomas Friedman did in fact predict.
Fascinating. All eyes on 2024, no matter which direction we take or what stories we do. Dr. Alon Bernstein, thank you so much for joining us from Tel Aviv and your thorough analysis. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Me too. Thank you. Have a great day.
What is the worst thing that can happen in case of a typing error? Miscommunication at times. Typing errors happen all the time, and they usually don't cause much trouble. But one particular case of a typing error almost caused a disaster of sorts. A typing error has reportedly routed millions of U.S. military emails to Mali. The problem was stimulated by entering .ml instead of .mil, and data containing diplomatic documents, tax returns, and passwords were exposed in minutes. The data leak was exposed by a Dutch contractor. The contractor managing Mali's domain has tried to warn the United States over the same issue several times in the past, but there seems to be no interest from the United States, although none of the emails are marked as classified. The exposed data includes internal complaints, travel plans of officials, maps, and photos of installation and crew lists. The Pentagon says measures are being taken to analyze this issue, and all information related to national security is taken very seriously. The risk is definitely real, and the data can be exploited by an enemy. Earlier, I sat down with Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó here in New York for an exclusive interview. We talked about a wide range of issues, from the Russia-Ukraine war to Hungary's tussle with European Union countries and Budapest relations with New Delhi. You can watch the full interview on WION's YouTube channel, but first, here's an excerpt. Hungary has kept channels of communication open with Russia and continues to do business with Russia. You recently visited Moscow and hosted a Russian cabinet minister in Budapest as well. Yet Hungary has condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Is your relationship with Russia complicated?
Well, we condemn the war. We think that the war is bad. We think that killing people is unacceptable. And, I usually say this in Russia as well. I even said it publicly on the Russian Energy Week, where, I was sitting with hundreds of spectators in the ballroom. And I made it very clear that please stop the war, this is bad. But in the meantime, I don't think that the major issue is now what we think about the war, because we think the same, that we condemn it. I mean, we like Europeans or transatlantic.
Right.
The major issue is what we think about how to stop the war, And there we think that a ceasefire should be launched immediately, peace talks should be started, and the peace agreement should be made. The European and transatlantic friends do not agree with our position, saying that some progress on the battlefield, which you don't know what that would mean, or how that would be created, should take place first, and then negotiations. I don't think that's realistic. So we were able to keep a pragmatic relationship with Russia alive, because we do believe that if we are not able to maintain the channels of communication open, then it means that we literally give up the hope for peace. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to give up the hope for peace, especially not as a neighboring country, and especially not as a nation, members of which are dying in this conflict, as I told you at the beginning of this very interview. So we keep the channels of communication open, not to speak about the fact that based on reality, based on physical reality, and based on infrastructure, we are dependent on Russian energy deliveries. So if we cut off our ties with Russia, be it gas deliveries, be it oil deliveries, we cannot supply the country. And not because this would be a political statement, not because this would be a matter of, political taste or ideological taste. This is because of physical reality. So as long as gas can only be delivered on pipeline, we are determined by infrastructure. And as long as oil needs pipelines, as oil deliveries needs pipelines, we need the Russian oil as well. So. And not to speak about the fact that we are building a nuclear power plant together with the Russians, which is a kind of long-term guarantee for our energy security. So therefore, we are not ready to give up these ties. Why would we? So this is a very practical, pragmatic relationship based on mutual, respect. And these relationships do not affect the sanction regime.
Perhaps some good news for the average American who is worried about the slowing economy. The global investment giant Goldman Sachs said that the U.S. has a better chance of skipping recession this year. Goldman Sachs' economists have lowered their probability of a recession starting next year from an earlier 25% to now 20%. They have cited better than expected economic data for the big cut in forecast. They also added that the fight against inflation will not trigger a recession. The note comes less than 1 week after the U.S. government reported that the consumer price index, a broad measure of price for everyday goods, rose just 0.2% in June from the previous month. Moreover, prices climbed 3% on an annual basis, which was the slowest pace in more than 2 years. But despite the continued retreat in inflation, the Federal Reserve is widely expected to approve another 0.25 percentage points of interest rate increase. However, Goldman Sachs said that it expects that it will be the final increase in the Fed's tightening cycle. Now we bring you some more good news. Humans are inching closer towards finding a treatment for Alzheimer's disease, the most common type of dementia. It's a disease that starts with mild memory loss and eventually affects a person's ability to carry out daily activities. An experiment drug called donanemab is showing new promising results. In the slow progression of Alzheimer's disease, especially if taken at an early stage. Among people who started taking it at the earliest stages of Alzheimer's, 47 had no disease progression on some measure after 1 year, and this is compared to 29% who took a placebo. The drug could prove to be a major breakthrough in the treatment of the disease. Alzheimer's is on the rise globally, where at least 55 million people are believed to be living with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia. So how does the drug work? Well, it's a monoclonal antibody that targets amyloid, a sticky neuron-damaging protein found in the brain of those with dementia. However, the drug benefits people to varying degrees. In people with relatively minor cognitive impairment on the trial, cognitive decline slowed by as much as 60%. The drug also cleared around 90% of the total amount of amyloid from the brain. But it has not proven to be much of a benefit for people at later stages of those with a common genetic variation. Participants carrying APO4, a gene which raises the risk of developing Alzheimer's, also benefits much less. The drug also works better in people with low levels of another brain protein called tau. Tau levels increase as Alzheimer's progresses. The drug's manufacturer, Eli Lilly, says the company has filed for approval by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Since the drug does not improve symptoms, a trial to see if it can prevent the disease in people who have not yet developed symptoms is still ongoing. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive condition, as many of us know, which means the symptoms develop gradually over many years. The company has not revealed the cost of the drug yet. However, related drugs have been priced at more than $26,000 per year. It's Priyanka Chopra Jonas's birthday. She turned 41. Let's take a look at some major milestones of the global icon's career so far.
A beauty queen who quite literally conquered the world. An Indian movie actor who is now a global icon. Be it for her sheer talent, philanthropy, or her personal life with her husband Nick Jonas and daughter Malti, Priyanka Chopra is one of the most popular Indian celebrities on social media. She shot to international fame following the premiere of Quantico in 2015. But how did she embark on a journey to Hollywood? Priyanka started her acting career in 2002 with the Tamil film Thamizhan starring opposite Vijay. 2 years later, she chose to play a femme fatale in the Hindi film Aitraz. It was a bold choice, but one that helped her cement her place in Bollywood. Like her character, she was unapologetic about her ways. But by her own confession, Priyanka has been at the receiving end of bullying and faced rejection due to nepotism. In 2008, several of her movies such as Love Story 2050, Got to See Great Ho and Drona performed terribly at the box office. However, the same year, she was awarded the National Film Award for her work in Fashion, a film directed by Madhur Bhandarkar. She went on to prove her mettle with movies like Saath Khoon Maaf, Barfi, Mary Kom and Bajirao Mastani. PC's achievements didn't end there. She went on to become one of the biggest names in Indian cinema to have made a successful crossover to Hollywood. In 2016, she received the People's Choice Award for her role in Quantico, becoming the first South Asian actor to receive the honor. Even while signing various Hollywood projects, Priyanka, through her production house Purple Pebble Pictures, has managed to produce various films in India. Here's wishing the trailblazer a very happy birthday.
The Saudi Pro League and the Major League Soccer have been hogging the limelight with their marquee signings this summer. Five-time World Player of the Year Cristiano Ronaldo, who started the exodus to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has said that, quote, the Saudi Pro League is better than the MLS, where his rival Lionel Messi has chosen to begin his next professional chapter. 38-year-old Ronaldo is heading into his first full season with Al Nassr since joining the club in January this year, following an acrimonious departure after his second stint at Manchester United. The Portugal captain spoke to media after playing the first half of his club